Everyday girls, where you at? Holla if you hear me. Everyday girls, strike a pose now if you with me. Everyday girls, where you at? Holla if you hear me. Strike a pose now, let get lit. Everyday girls, where you at? Holla if you hear me. Everyday girls, strike a pose now, let get lit. What we gotta say might be different, but we be really out here every day, trying to live it up. We just set the tone and we switch it out the blue. Show up every 24, that's just what we do. Said you need a break, so sister, here's your invitation. We just made it, catch a little phase for your meditation. Let me do it. Everyday girls, where you at? Holla if you hear me. Everyday girls, strike a pose now, let get lit. What we gotta say might be different, but we be really out here every day, trying to live it up. What we doing? Ooh, ooh, let me do it. Ooh, ooh.
Welcome back to Everyday Girls, where girls just want to laugh, love, and make lasting connections. Look who's back. My girl is back. I was so sad without you.
No, you wasn't. You had Lindsay.
Yes, I had Lindsay. Lindsay was our guest, and we really, really hope you enjoyed that episode. I know she has so much to offer, so many things to say, and I'm just so glad we got to shine a bright light on her for the world to see, give the world a little bit of our friend. And so thank you, Lindsay, again for joining us on that show. Did you get a chance to watch the show?
Duh.
What did you think?
I really, really loved it. I think highlighting Lindsay first was one of the best things we could have did. I feel like she represents kind of what the show is about. I loved her transparency. I loved pretty much everything she said, and even the things I've got to see what people mean when they say they talk back to the screen like they're in the conversation with us, because I was definitely chiming in, and I thought you did a great job without me. Don't get carried away now.
I'm not gonna get carried away. I loved being with Lindsay, but I did not like being without you. I felt very I didn't feel like I was in my skin. I felt
You seem pretty comfortable to me.
You bring a comfort level to me that, like, right now I don't feel nervous. Like with Lindsay, I feel like I had a level of nerves, even though that's my friend who I talk to pretty much every day. It was just different. I feel like you're my security blanket.
Well, we couldn't tell that you had nerves, but I did notice something. So y'all talked about a lot of different stuff.
We did.
A lot of things, like, you were able to give your opinion on. And there was one thing that, like, I noticed, like, when Lindsay talked about her dad a lot, and she talked about how she really, really loved her dad. And while so many people can relate to that, so many people can't. And then I looked at your face. I was like, because I be studying you, and your face just was like, I mean, it just looked like, nah.
I don't think everybody loves their dad. I do think that the way that I feel,
but you just kind of, you didn't want to interrupt that moment. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of like just speak on that, because everybody don't love their dad.
It's funny that you noticed that, because I particularly remember that moment where she was like, everybody loves their dad, and I was just like, crickets. I don't know if I love my dad, and I'm talking about my biological father. I consider my dad to be my stepdad, who's been in my life for over 15 years now. And so when I refer to my dad, that's who I'm talking about. But when I think about my biological dad, I don't necessarily know that I associate him with love. And to break it down just on a very elementary level, you typically can't love somebody that you don't know. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like just because somebody brought you into this world biologically, within me at least, and I'm just speaking for myself, I don't associate him with love. I don't look at him or think about him and feel like, oh, I love him. And so when she said everybody loves their dad, I could not relate. And I probably did give a little face. Sometimes when I think things, it comes all over my face. But like you said, that was a moment for her. That show was about her. And when we bring on guests, we want to make sure that the show is about them, because that is the point of bringing on guests. And so I didn't want to take away from that moment from her or disrupt the beautiful moment, because it was beautiful.
It was.
But like you said, not everybody has had that experience. And so, yeah, you know me very well. And I did not feel that in that moment.
Well, yeah, I definitely saw it all over your face, but you were a really, really gracious hostess. I loved everything that Lindsay said. And speaking of that, when she was talking about people romanticize their dad, even when they're not necessarily the greatest partner. And I was thinking, like, even people whose dad aren't in their life, I feel like sometimes they romanticize their dad because of the void that's there. Like, that void is, you're constantly looking to fill it.
I get what you're saying. I think I could speak more to trying to fill the void with things rather than romanticizing him. I don't think that I was ever one to romanticize him or try to make him out to be something that I knew that he wasn't. But I definitely know that I have had moments in my life where I tried to fill that void and fill it with the wrong things. And so I know that now in my adulthood, looking back into my adolescence and teenage years and young 20s, that I was out here doing stuff that I knew I shouldn't have been doing, but I didn't know why. When you are a person who has had an absentee father, Sorry. I feel like it's this conversation is hitting me.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. And I don't feel like crying, so just give me a second.
Okay. Well, you're doing great. We don't have to ask this question. Move on. I got more things to say.
No, I feel like I need to say certain things. Okay. Can you stop looking like that? You look like you feeling sorry for me.
I'm not feeling sorry for you at all. I like it. Talk about it. Feel it. Vulnerability is a strength. That's in my notes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just move on. I didn't know why I was doing those things, but that's part of going to therapy. You know what I mean? Is realizing why you do the things that you do and why you exhibit certain patterns and behaviors. And so you don't do those things anymore. And so I love Lindsay's insight on that, but I think that there are people like me who have a whole different perspective when it comes to fathers and fatherhood.
Well, one thing I really have admired about you over the years, just in general, is the way that you're not angry. And I feel like that is very, very commendable, because I know sometimes that frustration, even when people's dads are in their life, if they're not doing something or if everything's not lining up, that anger can translate and turn into other things. And I feel like you've been so intentional about making sure to let it go.
That came from somewhere, though, because I know in Lindsay's episode she talked about seeing our parents as men and women, and knowing that they had a whole set of issues before we ever came along, and just because we came along does not mean that that was going to snap them out of their own traumas that they had growing up. And so I remember as a child being angry, and I remember as a teenager being angry, and I remember being a young adult I was angry, but it was only after I met him and met with him in person that I was able to let the anger go. And I feel like when you forgive somebody, there's almost a level of like physically feeling a release. Yeah. Like your body does not get hot anymore. So I knew the moment that I felt a physical release of forgiveness for him. A few years ago, I went to Houston on vacation, and that's where he lives. And so I reached out to him to let him know I'm going to be in town. We met for dinner and drinks at like an Applebee's or something like that. And that's when he kind of started telling me his story and like why he felt the need that he had to leave when I was 6 years old. And ultimately what it came down to was him saying he had to save his own life. He was addicted to drugs. He was just really struggling in life and heading down a path of darkness. And for him, it was going to either end up being with him dead or in jail. And so he said that one day he knew that his car was about to get repossessed. So he got in that car and just headed south and drove so far south until he ended up in Houston. And ultimately, according to him, he was able to detox fully off of drugs. That way he didn't know anybody down there, so he didn't have access to it. And that was his way of just starting his life over. And so now as a mom at 33, I feel like I can kind of understand that. And I think that was the moment that birthed my grace for him, because I have kids and that doesn't stop me from being super overwhelmed in life and feeling like I'm drowning. And so I feel like in that moment, I could see him, like as Lindsay said, as a man instead of as my father who left his kids behind when I was younger. And that was the moment I felt like I could release all of my anger for him. And so am I a fan of his? No. Am I still hurt by the things that he's done? Of course. But I don't harbor the anger in my heart anymore.
Yeah, I really love that. And I love that forgiveness happened for you. That forgiveness didn't happen so he could feel better about himself and what he did. He has to live with those choices, but you being able to have that closure and that forgiveness come, like, I love that. And I think about like how God just restored above and beyond like what you could have thought. Like the dad for you is always Lance. And Lance is her mom's husband of 15 plus years, and he is the real deal. I love him. I mean, he's the chief of his family. I know he takes me in too. He always got a joke to crack on me. But like even watching him and your mom and the way that he loves her, there was no question. There was no transition. It was like when he came into her life, you were his daughter. And I felt that, and I feel that all the time. And so he was what you needed. It's like God knows what we need. And imagine if maybe your biological dad could have got it together somewhat and stayed around. What other turmoil might that have caused?
What would have come of me? And I don't feel like it's by accident that Lance has come into my life. I feel like I've never really found the words to express to him the gratitude that I have, because I feel like Lance is one of the only illustrations of what a man really is and should be, and how a woman should be treated by a man, and what a good man is, and what a real father looks like. He's one of the only demonstrations of that I've ever had in my life. And so the Father's Day cards that I give him can never express what he's meant to my life. And so I'm not going to cry.
Let it out.
I'm not gonna cry, but when I do refer to my dad, that is who I am talking about, and I mean that from the deep depths of who I am. That is my dad, and so
rightfully so. And I just love that you have walked through life so gracefully and giving your love despite a lot of the things that you've been through. And I know me and you were talking on one of the other episodes about those grenades that we can run into that will explode in our face, but like that's one thing that I feel like you can look at that grenade and it could potentially explode, but because you see it, because you've identified it, because you know the depths of it and you've let it go, it won't. It just won't.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. But I know me and you talk all the time about this other subject I wanted to talk about. Girl, I got a lot to say.
You got two episodes worth.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Just gonna have to excuse me. But you're talking about being pissed off, and like I feel like I get pissed off a lot.
We all get pissed off.
I get pissed off a lot, and you were talking about how over the years as an adult, well, I want you to say it. Like, talk about what you said about like when you get mad or when you get angry and the realization that you came to.
Okay, what I was saying was it behooves me that in the midst of your anger, in that moment where you are at that highest level of festivity is what my mom calls it, how we fail to see the other side of it in that moment, and how we allow our anger to basically blind us of knowing that after I calm down from this, after I give it some time and some space, it's going to be okay. When we're angry with another person who we love, we might be in love with them or we're in some form of relationship with them. This person means something to us. But in that moment of anger, you really can damage and leave huge open wounds to somebody that means something to you based on what you say or based on an action that you may take birth from that anger. And so what I said I want to start practicing is seeing the other side of it, of knowing that in 48 hours, I'm going to love this person just as I did before they upset me. And is it really worth doing damage to them? And I also compared it to our faith and how we feel about God, and how if you are truly a warrior in your faith, can you also be a worrier? Like, I feel like there is no room to worry if you really believe that God is going to work it out for you, because he always does. So why is it in the middle of the stress and you just feeling drained and feeling like the weight of the world is on you, is it so hard for us as humans to remember this is going to work out for me? God has my back in this. The same with the anger. Like, anger is a normal feeling. I have a right to be upset, but do I have a right to give my anger this much power where it's going to destroy some shit?
Right.
In the midst of it.
And that just reminded me of somewhere in the Bible it says, labor to my rest. And like it's a labor. Like, you have to consciously make an effort to rest, and like that doesn't come natural, and God already knew that it wasn't gonna come natural. But even more to that, like when I'm thinking of that, when you're talking about that, the person that I get the angriest with is the closest person to me, which is Tare, my husband. And so when I think about him and how he pisses me off, love you, boo. I get so mad. And back in the day, like maybe in our earlier years of marriage, I would let him have it. Okay, he would get all that and some, and then I would have to pick up the pieces of all the BS that I let, the cussing him out and to
hitting below the belt,
all of the below the. I had every below the belt because you know this person intimately, and now where I am now in my life, we don't do that anymore. But I always say, give it 24 hours. If you mad, you pissed. Okay, don't act. Give it a day. Give it 24 hours before you make a move. Before you go tell your mama. Before you go tell your sister. Because they going to be pissed still. And that was the other thing about anger. Don't talk unless it's 100% a safe space. Most of the time, the safest place you can talk to is up to God. Because you're not going to feel the same.
Right.
You're not going to be as angry as you were.
And even if you feel the same, like you said, the levels of that anger are sure to come down, and you can think more rationally and clearly after giving it space. And so I hope that really helps somebody today to just remember to calm down, walk away from the situation in the middle of your anger, come back to it, because it'll be better once you put some time and space in between.
It really will. And so that was all that from the Lindsay episode, all that derived from everything that she said and the things that she said. But I just thought that y'all had such an amazing conversation. I thought that she spoke with such grace and intelligence. So again, shout out to you, Lindsay. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for being an extension of this conversation here today.
Yes, we really appreciate you and your presence, and you did a great job. Lindsay can kind of overthink sometimes. So after she was like, did I say that right? I want to make sure I'm clear with how I want to come off and what my intentions were with the things that I said. But I felt like every word that came out of her mouth was valuable. I learned a lot, and I'm just really happy that that was our first guest. But with that being said, we have a lineup of more bomb guests that I'm super excited for you guys to see and hear from. And I just want to be clear about our intention on bringing on guests is that we know so many great people, and we just want to spotlight them and just give them a platform for it to be all about them. And I just loved having her and can't wait to have all the rest of our guests on.
And the other thing though is, if you have a desire to be a guest, don't be too proud to beg. No, but seriously, reach out to us. If we haven't asked you, it's not because we don't want you. It's just because, we haven't asked you. So reach out to us if you have the availability, if you have the time, if you have a message, if you have anything you want to say or for us to discuss and you want to be a guest, come on. We invite you.
If you have something that's really in your heart, you feel like it could help other people, please ask us. Because it's not that we haven't thought of you. We don't know. So let us know, and we will be happy to have you on the platform. Even if it's for a little pop-up episode. If you don't want to sit here for 30, 45 minutes with us, completely fine. But if you have a message, let us know. We need the content.
All right, that content. All right, well, I wanted to do just like a check-in with you with this week. Like, how was your week?
I had a really good week.
All right.
I know. It kind of caught me off guard to be able to say that, but I don't think that I have any complaints from this week. I feel like I just have a heart of gratefulness for this week. I feel like my peace is being restored at rapid rates. I was randomly sitting here with you a few minutes ago and just said, I really love my life right now. Aww. Like, I'm grateful for my kids. My children are great. I'm spending so much quality time with them. Yeah, I took Avery out. I let him ditch school, which I try to do every half of school year. So once in the beginning of the year before Christmas break and then one after. So we had a ditch day. I took him to breakfast. It was awesome. And I just wanted to be an example of spreading holiday cheer for him. And so one of the things we did at breakfast, I told him to go to the bathroom, and I said, when you come out, scan the breakfast restaurant, and pick somebody that we can pay it forward to. And so everybody was there with somebody except for one man. And Avery came back to the table like, the man in the gray hat. And I was like, why did you pick him? And he was like, he was sitting by himself. He was like, it just looked like he had a bad day. He was like picking around in his food. And so I think that would be a good person. And so we did. We paid his bill. But the Waitron, the damn Waitron told the man that it was us. And I'm like, you weren't supposed to tell him. So I heard her say, your bill was paid by that lady back there. I'm like, and so I'm ducking down like, girl, you ain't supposed to tell what you paid for. It's not for credit. But me and Avery walked out of the restaurant. We walked past him trying to act like nothing happened. And the man was like, excuse me, what's your name? And I was like, hi, I'm Marcy. And I was like, this is my son, Avery. And he was about a middle-aged black man. And he was like, I mean, nobody has ever done anything like that for me. He's like, that does not happen in my life. Like, you don't even understand. I'm sitting here in shock that happened to me. He's like, I've seen that on TV, but it's never happened to me. And I was like, yeah, I told my son to pick somebody out and he chose you. And he was like, man, young man, I really admire that. He was so moved and like, I just love that I was able to do that for him and that Avery was there and took part in it. Yeah. And it was just really great. The man ended up telling us he owns a barbershop near our house and that if Avery ever needs a haircut, bring him on by for a haircut so he can, pay it back forward to us. And so that was just a really awesome experience. And so it's just little moments like that. It's been the little things that I'm just holding on to in this holiday season. So I feel like I don't have any complaints. Life feels good right now.
That's great. I honestly wholeheartedly agree. I feel like this past week, we did a tea party with my paternal grandmother, so my dad's mom, and that side of the family with some of my aunts and cousins, and we got together and we sipped tea. We did this exercise where we said, what is a word or a phrase to sum up our year, and then a word or a phrase to start our new year. And the word or phrase I chose was God is faithful, because I feel like this has been a rough year for a lot of people, and we keep saying that every single year, but time and time again, God has proved faithful to just provide for us to still have our health, for us to still have our family members. Even if we lost them along the way, he's kept us and he's kept us in peace. And so there's so much to be grateful for. And then my phrase for the next year was elevation, because I'm just trying to go up in every area. And so hearing my grandmother, who turned 76, say what her word is, this gave me chills. She was like, I'm 76. If I die at the age my mom died, I only have 14 more years here on earth. And then she was like, I'm going to wake up every day and choose to live it with purpose. And she said that, and we could say that, me and you could say that, but it hits different for somebody who has things into perspective. And my grandmother has had a challenging life. She suffers with MS, but she never complains. And so I just felt like that moment was so special and sacred, and I really appreciated that. And it kind of set the tone. That was on Saturday, and that kind of set the tone for the rest of my week. And I just feel grateful to still have her, and I feel grateful that I learned that lesson. And it was a good time.
I love Mommy Jan. I feel like anytime that I've ever been in her presence, I always leave feeling good. So I'm glad that you brought her up and
she loves you too.
I love her.
Your friend Marcy.
Yeah, she doesn't forget. She never forgets my name or anything.
And she forgets a lot because she's in early stages of dementia, but she don't forget that.
Yep. And when I'm in her presence, she just makes me feel like she sees me. And so I love that. I love that you have her. I love that Kristen still has both of her grandmothers.
It's a blessing.
It really is a blessing. And Kristen's grandmother, in my sadness of posting about my grandmother not being here, was like, you got me. Like, I am here. Like, I love that our families just embrace each other like that.
Yeah, we real emotional and sentimental this episode.
We are. I did have some sort of challenges in communication, I think, where it kind of shed light on some of the growth that I had. And it was a situation where I felt like I really needed to speak up for myself so I didn't feel like I was being taken advantage of. And I feel like back in the day, when you felt wronged or disrespected in any kind of way, for me at least, I feel like I was quick to lash out with my tongue and like tell somebody about themselves and tell them how what they're doing impacts me. But now that I have so much more awareness and mindfulness of things like timing and the way that I say things, I felt like dealing with this situation, it wasn't the right time. And so I made a conscious decision to not say anything the way that I wanted to say it in that moment, especially when we think about timing and how it's about to be Christmas. And like I said, I had a really good weekend, so I didn't want anything to come in and muddy that up for me. It's a situation that I still need to deal with. I'm deciding to deal with it later because now is not the time to do it.
I feel like that's practicing so much self-control.
Right.
That's practicing like considering others. And I can wholeheartedly admit and say that in the past, I didn't consider the timing or what was good for other people. And I've talked about that before. Like, I just had to say what I had to say.
Right.
Because I'm not going to do myself a disservice. But honestly, sometimes you are doing yourself a disservice to disrupt somebody else's life. And how do you feel about yourself after?
Right. Because in the moment it feel good telling somebody off, but now you have to deal with their response, their feelings, how you came off, and then you may end up putting yourself in a position where now you have to apologize when originally you weren't even the one in the wrong. Yep. And so it's definitely about time, and it's about sacrificing your own discomfort for somebody else's. And while I necessarily don't agree with that, I just feel like timing is everything. And like we talked about before, reading the room and just making sure that your intention is pure with what you're trying to tell this person in the name of sticking up for yourself.
And will they be able to receive it? Is this the type of person that can interpret a text correctly? Is this the type of person that needs me to be in their face talking to them? And to do all of that, you got to slow down.
You have to.
Like, that was a big lesson for me. Just slow down.
And like we said earlier, put time in between, because your emotions will make a fool out of you every single time. Every time.
Don't I know it?
Don't we all know it?
Do you feel like that's ever happened in our friendship where our emotions made a fool out of us?
Duh. What kind of question is that? Both of us. I remember a situation recently where I was so mad. I was so upset because I felt left out of something. I felt like I should have been there. And it was nobody's fault. It was a classic case of miscommunication and failure to communicate. And somewhere in the midst of all of that, I feel like the ball kind of got dropped with my invite to this thing. I was so hurt. And so instead of telling everybody involved about themselves and ruining a special moment for other people, I decided to write a note. I put in my notes how everything made me feel. And I did that because it got it off of me. Like, okay, let me just express how I feel. And then in the aftermath of us discussing what happened, I was like, well, I have a note. And like ended up sending you the note. And she laughed at it. You laughed at it.
No, I just laughed because, well, one, she's a good writer. It was really entertaining. I mean, there were some parts, obviously, that poked parts of me that I was irritated and felt like I had feedback. But those were her. First of all, she shouldn't have sent me the damn note.
I shouldn't have.
That was for your private viewing. But we don't have boundaries in some areas, and we're working on that. But I felt like her doing that was like such a therapeutic thing, and getting it off of you is a real thing. Get it off of you in the correct way, in a safe way. I know a lot of people journal. Well, I ain't finna journal, so I use my notes. That's something that I do all the time.
And to the point we made earlier, those things that I put in that note, had I unleashed those things onto you, it's no telling what damage that would have caused to our friendship.
Well, not much, since you did unleash the note eventually. Nigga.
Well, I gave a bunch of disclaimers about the note and was just like, this is how my true raw feelings about the situation that happened. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is how you present something matters. If I would have verbally said some of those things, they probably would have had a way different impact than you just reading them in the aftermath and being like, oh, okay, this is how she felt in the moment.
Yeah, and it's hard, and it's like you have to have compassion on both ends. In that incident, I really didn't understand. You know, she talks about how she goes mute a little bit. So she wasn't really saying anything. And I'm all excited and regular. And I was like, is everything okay? And then later on it came out and we were able to talk about it and discuss it.
Just ended up in pure, genuine understanding that nobody had any malintent. And that's another thing I think you have to remember, that people's hearts are pure. The people that you love and care about, they don't want to do anything to hurt you or harm you. So if they end up doing that, just understand that they are human beings, and human beings make mistakes, and sometimes we can't always take that personal. And so I think that kind of spoke to my maturity and growth in the situation, and knowing nobody was out here trying to get me.
Right. And I feel like I had to give grace and offer my forgiveness to her for feeling like, once again, I let her down with something
or left me out. And I think that also comes with you just knowing me as a person, and knowing I have certain personal issues with rejection and feeling left out. It's really bad. But also I think I want to be careful not to drip my trauma all over everybody and blame everybody for what I've been through, or project, or you know what I mean, like put that on them, because that's not your problem that I felt such an impact from that simply because of what I've been through. And that's another question. Are y'all being careful not to drip your trauma all over people? If I could put an illustration to it, I imagine a firefighter with the hose that puts out the fire, and the firefighter is the person who's been through all these traumatic experiences, and what's coming out of that hose is all of those experiences, but what's on the other end of the water is you just being like, like getting attacked by their trauma. And so just be careful that you are not splashing your trauma all over people who really don't deserve it.
And I feel like people really don't know. I know it wasn't on purpose that you were doing that. These were genuine, real feelings that you had to surface, you know, and I'm happy that they did surface. And I feel like now you put words to them. I feel like in the past, maybe it might have dripped, but you couldn't identify that. And it was just like, understand what I'm saying, and you don't see my perspective. But that took work too, for me to understand that and to give grace and compassion to that, while dealing with my own insecurities of whatever I feel, of not wanting to do anybody wrong, or feeling like, where did I go wrong, and just wanted to be perfect. And maybe I did do something that was that hurt somebody's feelings. I don't know. I can't really remember everything from that specific situation, but it's always two sides to everything, and there's always a root to whatever issues that you're going through. Do yourself the favor and discover the root.
Figure out the root. And I think we both do that a lot. Like, we try to figure out and identify, okay, what's at the root of why I really feel like this? And that can really help you with processing the things that you go through.
It'd be embarrassing. I'd be embarrassed in front of myself thinking about the root of some of the insecurities that I have that make me say certain things or behave a certain way. And it's with vulnerability is strength. And I feel like we're talking candidly now. We're talking about things that still might even feel a little bit uncomfortable even right now while we're sitting here, but this takes practice. And that's why I want to like put out there, this is not just something that has happened overnight. This is years of us working on ourselves individually, us being in relationships with other people, and then talking things through with each other. So it's not just like a microwave type of thing. It's something that takes time and effort and energy.
And then wanting to work on something that you know is a part of you that you want to change. Like you said, it takes practice. It's almost like going to the gym. If you want to see those results, you have to flex those muscles and make them stronger, and put yourself in uncomfortable situations of communication to be better at it. Like the situation I was talking about earlier, where I didn't necessarily know how I wanted to communicate to this person, that I felt like they were taking advantage of me. I know for a fact that I'm a much stronger writer than I am speaker. But then I also have to consider that some people misinterpret the way that written down words, they misinterpret your intention behind them, and they hear them how they want to hear them.
Filter.
Right. So you have to definitely find a balance. But I knew in that particular situation that the best way to relay what I wanted to relay was to verbally communicate it. But since I'm insecure in that area, I didn't take that route. But I know that if I want to get better in that area of confronting situations verbally, I have to practice that.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I do address this situation, I'm going to do it verbally. I'm going to throw myself in that fire and make sure that that is something that I'm practicing. Because if I don't do it, I'll never become better at it.
That's so true. That was so good. And on that note,
shout outs.
Yeah, so I want to shout out my 2 cousins. They were at the tea that I was talking about with my grandmother. They're twins, Kayla and Maya. And I just want to shout them out because they are in this world doing the Zam thing. Like, they are both successful in their careers. Their mom, my auntie, my dad's sister, my dad only has one sister, suffered a heart attack and her heart stopped and she almost died last year. And I feel like it brought all of them closer. But the way that they stepped up for their mom, like, it really touched me. They stepped up and they became just a tight little unit. And I just want to shout y'all out for the effort that y'all put in, for the work that y'all put in, for the care that you took for your mom, and for the communication that you gave to the family while everything was happening. I love y'all. Y'all big cousin loves you. And that's it.
You about to cry? Well, shout out to you girls for stepping up and being there for your mom and your family, making Kristen emotional over here. Kristen loves her little cousins, like Kristen.
And they grown.
They are. I know. They grown, but they going to be little forever. But you just have such a heart for your cousins, and I do too. And cousins are one of those underrated, I feel like, family relationships, because they're your cousins, but sometimes they feel like your siblings. And so that was a wonderful shout out. My shout out for today is Bianca. And we've talked about Bianca several times on this show, but I really want to shout her out because I feel like we have just been having the most funny, candid conversations in the past couple days. She has easily become one of my safe spaces, and I know that I can definitely just be myself when I interact with her. She always has so much humor to offer me, and so I just want to shout her out because Bianca is just a super generous person. She has just a really intentional and a kind heart for the people that she loves, and so I just feel like that's one of my friends that I love the most, and she definitely deserves the spotlight and to be shouted out. Hopefully we can have her as a guest because that's another person who I feel like has so much to offer the world, but one of my favorite things that she has to offer is her humor. I love her. You can guarantee that when you come in contact with Bianca, you're going to leave with some laughs, and so shout out to you, Bianca. You mean so much to me. Your friendship has meant a lot to me, and I can't wait to have you on.
I want to shout out Bianca too.
Okay, go ahead.
Get that shout out.
I just feel like Bianca always posts on her story every single day. And this is how me and her kind of connected. Her daughter, Brooklyn, who I love, is a Destiny Dance Company, my toddler baby. But also, Bianca posts on her story every single day her showing up for herself in the means of working out and taking care of her body and eating the right foods. And I've been watching her for a couple years now, and I've literally seen her body transform. And I reached out to her and just kind of told her a little bit how I was feeling about myself, and she swooped right in. And I feel like that's another genuine person. Like, she just genuinely, naturally cares. And shout out to you, Bianca, for just being you. And I just want to add my 2 cents.
Thank you for that. Well, we love you, Bianca.
All right, guys. So thank you so much for watching Everyday Girls. If you have not already, please like this video, subscribe, and share it.
We got 40 subscribers, girl.
Okay, 40. $40.
$40.
And shout out to Tennille for all of your live comments and tweets.
Love you, girl. We'll see y'all next time.
Everyday girls, where you at? Holla if you hear me. Everyday girls, strike a pose now if you with me. What we gotta say may be different, but we be really out here every day trying to